Thank you, Dora. Thank you. It's very nice to be among such distinguished people. It's very nice to see each of you, and obviously feel very humble among this crowd of great historic importance and significance. And in this wonderful city of Baku, which is changing so fast and flourishing so fast. Indeed, I would say from being almost nowhere several years ago, being one of the world's most exciting places right now, without exaggeration, without just being complimentary to our host. That's the reality which we have to all acknowledge. It's such a pleasure to be here and always to enter directly to this discussion. Paradox of our times is that every day we see ourselves in a much more globalized world. Obviously, the web is changing the world, the integrated global markets, global progress, education, technologies, everything becomes global. It is more than sad to come here and think that despite all of this, in 21st century, ethnic cleansing is seen still by some as a way to solve political issues. It's very painful to look at hundreds of thousands of Azeri and Georgian citizens that cannot go back to their houses simply because somebody has one day decided that it's no longer their house. That simply they just don't belong there for all the political reasons and because the simple fact of what ethnic origin they belong. Today, when there is one, it's so close, from New York to Singapore, from there to Shanghai, from there to Paris, and then you see that they cannot go just across the line to your village, where you were born, your ancestors' graves are located. We still have to walk through minefields today when everything is so modern and open. So our region is still marked by these old hatreds. Victim of cynical games of great powers, and as a result of human tragedy. We are now at a very important crossroads for this region. And we think very carefully what's happening regionally here. There is lots of things that is being played out this year, in this capital, in this country, in this region. You saw that we had in several last years mass change in terms of political orientations. We had the Rose Revolution in Georgia, Orange Revolution in Ukraine. We had mass drive towards the west of the whole region, and it was driven by our political will, the wills of our people. It's also Azerbaijan with very big energy resources. That is very important alternative route through the whole region to get to Europe. So it's all connected, the process that took place in Ukraine, in Georgia, in Moldova, in Azerbaijan, to Europe's security, to democracy, to stability, to further development. Now what we see, what happened in the last several years? The governments that were the main partners of Europe and the United States in this region, with different political situations, with different economic or governmental success. They succumbed one after another in big part to foreign pressure, and they fell. And so we see, on the one hand, we were seeing the emergence of new way of stability, freedom, Western orientation all over the region, and now we see reversal of it for the last several years. It's connected to a number of factors: European crisis, the general perception of the U.S. withdrawal, which might be true or not, but the perception is there, and I think the U.S. presence, U.S. factor is based not only on sheer force, but also a big part on perceptions. And we had, unfortunately, this perception all over the region. So we see reversal of a historic trend, which we thought was irreversible. So now what stays really is Azerbaijan. And Azerbaijan if Azerbaijan keeps developing, if Azerbaijan keeps its independent political course, which is by itself, it's not a given, because we've seen other countries in the region that have energy resources, that had much better heritage than Azerbaijan, and didn't manage to have this foreign policy orientation, didn't have to manage this clear vision where they want to go. Azerbaijan is an exception, a very lucky one, based on the vision of Heydar Aliyev and also his son. Now, Of course, it's also a big impediment for certain people that don't want to see post-Soviet space go somewhere and become independent, break free. So we should be very careful what happens here. On the one hand, it's a fate of energy security of Europe. This is a fate of intertwined fates of different political backgrounds, but of democracies, of the people like Georgia, Ukraine, Moldova, and indeed what happens also to the north in Russia. It's also connected to what might happen to what happens in Afghanistan. Because once there is the NATO operations, this stage is completed in Afghanistan, the risk is that there will be growth of fundamentalists all over Central Asia. And which country is the first line of defense against it? The line is on the Caspian, and this is Azerbaijan as the bulwark of civilization and modernization in this part of the world. And again, that faces puts huge stake on Azerbaijan as a player. And again, we see that this is under threat. So, in long run, I'm optimistic. In long run, divide and rule will not work here. The shale gas is transforming everybody, including the Russian positions. I think Europe will be out of crisis. I think Eastern Partnership eventually will work. I think the United States with shale gas boom will become a much bigger player overall and will have much more will require self-confidence. But what happens in this very dangerous period for the next year or so here? That will determine what will happen in decades after that. That's why it's so important to understand the complexities, what might happen there. In long run, I think South Caucasus will be as a united region because Armenia will need modern communications. It cannot stay as an isolated country, and I'm sure we will manage to integrate Armenia into this common zone of peace and stability, but it should be done in part as a political regularization, not by unilateral acts, not by just reopening, for instance, railway through Georgia and then killing the project to Kars-Akhalkalaki, which is a strategic project now for us, but through getting political solutions. But again, to get that political solutions, we should keep Azerbaijan's foreign policy as it is, and the world has stake in Azerbaijan keeping the course and staying stable. World has the interest not allowing to destabilize this country now, because we've seen how enemies of independent course work in my country. We've seen it. And it's possible, it's doable. Nobody expected some of the processes developed in Georgia, and they happened. And we looked like a very stable and a very solid country. And Azerbaijan looks very stable, very successful, very solid, and we want them to stay this way because we've learned our lessons. The forces in motion are dangerous forces, and that forces can do lots of harm. And so, as I said, if we see the global picture, we will keep South Caucasus as a gateway towards Central Asia, towards wider Middle East, as a zone of stability, as a zone of future promises for its own peoples, because I think we've seen this happening all over the place as a laboratory for development, as a laboratory for better lives for people, as a laboratory for redistribution of incomes, as a laboratory for more integrated and international interdependence between all of us. This is the vision that I share with our Azeri friends. This is the vision for the next decade, and this is the reason why I'm waking up every day, the vision for which we will all fight restlessly because the stake is right now very important. 1920s. Our country seemed very promising and flourishing. We had, Ilham Aliyev spoke today about Baku oil boom, first pipeline, noble investments, new cities becoming reality, and then what happened? We collapsed one after another, as a domino. 5 years ago, I would not think it was ever possible. 3 years ago, I would think it would be like 4 years ago, I would think it was almost impossible. Now, unfortunately, I'm thinking that some of this history is played out again. And we should be all aware of it and try to, this time, steer history in the right direction. Thank you.
So, well, we know that Georgia has many small minority groups.
Yes.
Some of them also Azeris. And there is a big issue which came up in Georgia about the language.
Yeah.
The language issue is open in Georgia, and I would like to hear your comment after your experience, and what do you think will be done in Georgia in the time which comes?
Well, I think first of all, Azeri group in Georgia, which I don't like to call minority because I think they should be important and integral part of our society. We are a multi-ethnic society, which is we are proud of this diversity. I think it's our strength. It is very significant. And I think the issue is here that, first of all, they should learn Georgian. They are learning Georgian. We had a program where we sent thousands of young postgraduate Georgian students, especially to rural areas, to live in families among ethnic Azeris and to allow them to get language skills. We have affirmative programs at our universities to get them study not here in Baku, which is also great when they go to Azerbaijan, but also to bring them to Georgian University, and this has been working very successfully lately. So, with regard to the language, I mean, we also develop their language and culture. That's very important. But they should own Georgia. As co-owners of Georgia, they should know the state language. There was a campaign now connected to other ethnic group in Georgia, Armenians, when we were saying that we should urgently put the main stress on European Convention of Regional Charter of Regional Languages and basically do this in a very hasty manner. And I was opposing it. I think it was steered by some elements from outside Georgia, mostly the people who wanted to not only stop integration, but destabilize my country. I think what we also should apply in terms of the sense of Armenians is the same as with other groups. Give them access to better education, give them, like we give them access to better infrastructure, to better development. If you look very carefully, for instance, what's happening on Azerbaijan's role in Georgia. Azerbaijan and us, we are building one of the biggest railway projects in modern history. This is a railway basically between Beijing and London, very modern one, with the hub in the town of Akhalkalaki. Town of Akhalkalaki is almost 100% ethnically Armenian. And this is Azeri investment. And this really contributes to development of local community to a great extent. It's huge importance for all of them. So that's a thing where you see cooperation despite ethnic boundaries. And that's the way to take, not to say, oh, you are separate now, you are separate, you should have your language, stay there, not allow anybody in, and that will be the way to take. No. I think that eventually this will be one region through development, through integration, through investments, and that also means that they should integrate where they live, and I think we have full understanding of Azeri with Azeri leadership on this issue. I have to say that Ehud is amazing. He has phenomenal knowledge generally of culture and literature and history, including the Georgian literature and history. I was always very impressed by the depth of his knowledge, and he could quote Georgian poets, which is very rare among superficial world of us, of politicians, as we know. The point here is that, indeed, what we are talking about, hopefully we don't have to realize later that we told you so. Things I'm talking about, they better not happen. We should keep Azerbaijan on the course, and that will be the best indication of what we are doing. Thank you.